Afternoon. So today is day 12 of 28 vegans. The whole preface of this idea is that I was going to create this video series to give thanks to some of the people who have influenced and impacted my vegan journey, folks who bring something to my life that I really appreciate, that still guide me on my vegan journey. So I wanted to bring people on as I can. It's been challenging scheduling everybody, but it's been a lot of fun talking to some incredible people who are just absolutely wonderful in this movement. And today we have a guest on who is going to be Elysabeth Alfano. She just sent a request to join. Elysabeth is an outstanding journalist who I really appreciate her passion, her commitment, and she has gotten to interview some of my favorite men in the movement. If you look at people like Damian Mander, Philip Wolin, Gene Bauer, to me, like, to be able to talk to these people and to be able to share their message is absolutely incredible. So that's one of the reasons why I wanted to bring Elysabeth on, because she brings a wonderful perspective to this and brings such a powerful message and light to this movement. So let me bring Elysabeth on and see if we can get this all set up here. Go live. Hi.
Hi.
How are you doing today?
I'm great. Thanks for having me.
You're very welcome.
I'm not the techiest among us, so I'm going to pick up my phone. Is that okay? Oh.
Absolutely. You do what you got to do.
Okay, I'm picking up my phone, and I'm going to make sure that I get my battery. Hey, everybody. For those of you who aren't techie, you know exactly how this goes. I'm getting my battery so that we'll be good for as long as we want.
That's how things work out, right? It's like when you need your phone, it's almost dead. When you're doing something, you need something else to go along with it.
Yes, completely. I of course should have thought about this ahead of time. But look, at the very least, you all can see my kitchen. So, okay.
No worries. No worries whatsoever.
So I'm in LA. I just love technology. I'm in LA, and of course you're in Ohio. How fun is that?
Yes, it's funny how this works. So, thanks to you, I'm actually going to have a guest on that's a little further away from me. I'm going to have Dustin Watton on Saturday, and he's actually in Berlin.
Yes.
For the folks that know Dustin, he is a member of the U.S. men's volleyball team, and appreciate him, setting some time aside. And it's tough enough when you and I are 3 hours away, but Dustin and I are 6 hours away. So we got things to work out quite well. So appreciate you lining that up for us. So that's always a positive connection.
My pleasure. My pleasure. Yeah, he's a wonderful person. I can't say enough about him. He really is just a beautiful human being, and he's so well thought. You'll see this. I hope everyone can listen when you have him on. He's just so well thought out and structured in his way of moving through the world. So I think, particularly plant-based athletes are going to love him because he's a USA team volleyball player, but also just him as a person. And he's like such a normal guy's guy, but he's just really well thought out, and everything he does is with intent. So I think if you watch that, whenever he's on, when is he on exactly?
Saturday at either 12 or 12:30. I forget what time it is, but that'll be Eastern time zone.
Shout out to everybody to watch that on Saturday, because you can learn a lot from him.
That'll be great. I appreciate when I reached out to you, I was looking for some more vegan men to bring onto this. I've talked previously that the ratio is still 70-30. Yeah, I know, right? So, the Sud brothers would argue that we should leave the ratio alone, but, I saw Bobby's on, maybe it's Adam. I saw one of them jump on there, but that's one of the things.
It's fun.
I want to encourage more men to come to this, because it's not, this movement is going to explode when more men realize that it's not taking anything away from you being kind to an animal. In one of my favorite interviews I've watched with you and Damian Mander, Damian says, and I quote this, he says, "Why would I want to fuck with something that can't defend itself?"
One of my very favorite quotes, by the way.
There's nothing manly about it.
And he goes on to say, and I think that this is really powerful as well, he goes on to say that, when you think of what we want in our society for men, what society sort of expects of them, you think someone who's standing up for his family, someone who's a defender, someone who's a leader, someone who's out in front, someone who's very strong and not just following everybody else.
Right.
You don't think of somebody who's a bully. That there's nothing manly about that. That's cowardly, right? You don't think of somebody who's picking on the weak. I mean, picking on a chicken, literally a chicken. What is manly about that? There is nothing that is even remotely fair in that fight. So I think strong men are those who lead and stand out and defend, not those who are picking on weaker beings. So, you know, we look to men, as Damien says, we look to men to defend the vulnerable, and that's a real man.
Absolutely. You know, in an interview, he talks about there's nothing more vulnerable, as you just laid out, than animals.
Right.
You know, they don't have a voice to say no. They don't have a voice to say stop. But thankfully, Damien and I have big mouths, and we're not afraid to use it for, you know, what we believe in. And, you know, just like Damien, I didn't grow up this way. So my wife was strong enough to lead our family to this and lead me to this journey. And, you know, we've had some friends and her, and they'll joke, they say they've created a monster. This is something that's become very passionate to me. I will be in the grocery store, and I have no problem starting some kind of outreach. I will be, you know, I had some Jehovah's Witnesses show up the other day at the front door. And they asked me if I had time for a message of compassion and kindness. And I said, yes, I do.
Yes. So, and did you ask them if they did as well? I'd be curious if they were vegan.
I did, and they were not. So I brought them in, and I kind of shared this the other day, but I brought them in. We have a wall that's got pictures of some of our rescues on the wall. And I showed them pictures of our cow, Captain. And I explained to them why they're, you know, there's no different than your dog, no different than your cat. There's no reason we shouldn't love them any more or any less than any other animal, and they're a sentient being. And then one of them started reading scriptures, and he said, you know, I can't find anything in the Garden of Eden that says anything that we ate the animals in the Garden of Eden. And, you know, so they weren't expecting that. And I think that's, you know, I think that's one of the things I enjoy doing, because I can talk to anybody anywhere. And so I'm the monster my wife created, and I really appreciate that. So,
you know, I'll go ahead and quote Moby there, who's someone that I've also interviewed. And I think it's Moby who pointed out to me that the animals were the only entities not kicked out of the Garden of Eden. So that's got to tell you something there as well.
Yes. You know, you've got people that use that as a defense, and I think that's a ridiculous excuse. You know, there's nothing kind and compassionate and loving about hurting an animal for any reason.
Right, so. Of course. And you got to think what kind of God would get behind that. So I always think religion is a very poor rationale, because it teaches you to be the opposite. So if for those who are believing in the life after, etc., you know, karma has a funny way of coming back to you, because there's nothing kind and compassionate about killing, and not from my perspective, not just the killing, which, you know, in and of itself is that counts, that's enough. Sure. But the entire torturous process leading up to that point, you know, it would be one thing if they at least had some sort of access to a normal, healthy, joyful life, but it is from start to finish torturous and nothing short of that. So very hard to get behind that, and then call yourself religious. Sorry, I don't buy it.
Can't do it, right? So I couldn't agree more. So now you're all over the place. So you're in LA.
Yeah.
You spend time in Chicago where your mom still lives. So you have obligations there. You have obligations in Chicago. You are a very busy woman. So I really appreciate your time. So would you care to share some of the things that you have your fingers involved in?
Yeah, sure. So I've been a journalist, not a plant-based journalist, but I've been a journalist since about 2010. And when I became vegan, which would have been in January of 2016, I decided, okay, this is really very much like you. As soon as I was on board, I was 180% on board.
Yes.
Okay, I really want to take my skill set, and this is something that I love about the vegan community, because a lot of people do this. I wanted to take my skill set and apply it to veganism, and just, you know, it changed my life so much for the better that I just wanted to share what I learned and what I know about veganism and all of its great attributes. So I thought, okay, I'm going to take my skills as a journalist and I'm going to take that on the road. So there's a lot that I do within the vegan community. So shout out to Jane Unchained, Jane Mitchell, love her, love all that she does. Such a strong woman, an excellent journalist, and has such far reach and impact because she's so powerful for the vegan movement. So shout out to her. I love her. And I also write for Vegan Magazine. Shout out to Vegan Magazine. And every once in a blue moon, I get to contribute for Veg News. Hi, Jasmine Singer. Shout out to you. So these are some incredible women. Christine at Vegan Magazine. But I wanted to take my skill set further than our community, which is growing, by the way.
It is.
More and more folks are coming on, which is just so awesome. But I wanted to take it to mainstream media. So that's really the focus of what I do now. I'm an on-air reporter host, I should say, for WGN Radio in Chicago. Shout out WGN Radio, primarily a sports station, really. So yes. I'm so honored and grateful to be with that station, period, because they're, such an important stronghold in the journalistic world. But then that they let me talk about plant-based stuff and kind of bring that news to the Midwest. For those of you who don't know WGN Radio, it can reach as far as Canada. So it's not just WGN Radio Chicago. It has quite a far reach, and you can get it almost anywhere in the Midwest and even up to some of Canada. So I love being an on-air host for WGN Radio, and they have me whenever they're not covering live sports and there's an opening. So I love that. And I'm doing some freelance work for KCRW in Los Angeles. They're an NPR member station. So I love doing that. So I just try to get the word out far and beyond. As I said, WGN Radio is primarily a sports-based station. So it's great to bring all the news to, about plant-based athletes, for example, and about protein, plant protein, and about the health benefits and how it's better for cardiovascular health and diabetes, et cetera, cancer. So it's great to bring that to WGN. And WGN has given me a platform for my podcast. So I'm not just an on-air host there, but I also have the Awesome Vegans podcast, which is where I've interviewed so many of these people that you're talking about, Damian Mander,
yes,
Willen, and so many others. If I'll just give a shout out, you can go to ElysabethAlfano.com. It's ELYSABETH. So a little funky spelling on Elizabeth. Elysabeth Alfano, ALFANO. And you can see all my podcast. So I just interviewed Billy Corrigan from Smashing Pumpkins. Yes. I did not know that he was vegan until
I didn't either.
It was great. Yeah.
That's I love your passion that you bring to this movement. I love how much you enjoy what you're doing and how much you share that with everyone. Some of those men that you mentioned, one of my platforms is I want to reach more men to come to this movement to wake up. You and I shared a conversation a little bit ago that I had a post from someone that I've known for a long time yesterday that I really struggled with. And it's kind of that mentality of, like men for some reason believe that you're giving up something by being kind to an animal. I used to be of the philosophy that animals were here for me, not with me. And changing that perspective and seeing things differently has really opened my eyes and opened my life. And I'm just in awe and enamored in this movement, and I want to do everything I possibly can to share my message because I know there are other men out there who grew up the same way I did. Their dads and their dads before them, taught them, we're going to go out and hunt. This is what you do when you grow up. And then I find out that, that's not compassion. That's not kind. That's not what these animals deserve. It's been incredible being a part of this, and I appreciate all that you bring to this movement. So go ahead.
So I have a question for you there, because, we originally met over Instagram, and because of your messages about being a former hunter, and I know there's some of both of our followers / our friends, shout out to Jason Boxler, shout out to Chris Green in Oklahoma. So, there are other hunters and farmers, I think, as you pointed out on your channel, who are changing their ways. But of course, it's not the majority. So I'm wondering, as a guy, when you were hunting, you had dogs probably. If you didn't have them as pets, you probably had them around you. And you didn't treat dogs that way, I'm guessing.
No, absolutely not.
So why was it hard to make that connection before?
That's a great question. from the time you're raised, you are taught that cows, pigs, and chickens are here for food. That's what they're raised for. That's, we live in rural parts of Ohio, not too rural, we're just outside of Dayton, but we live in a small farm community. And, that's just the way we were raised. We were raised that you could compassionately take an animal as long as you did it correctly. You're doing it as painlessly as possible. You're being, humane, which is a lie. You can't humanely take anyone's or anything's life that doesn't want to die. There's no way to do that. And that's just kind of the mentality you're believed to raise. And, it starts out between your parents and between education. In school, they teach you the food pyramid. The food pyramid, and it shows you, you got to have this much protein, and it comes from chicken, pork, and beef. And they lead you to believe that that's the only place the protein comes from. So to me, it's almost like, you've been indoctrinated. And, kind of a passage of a man in this community that I grew up in is that, when you get old enough, and for me, it was about 8 or 9 years old, you go out with your dad and you start hunting. And I see friends of mine who, they take their sons and daughters hunting and they post pictures of it. And to me, it breaks my heart because I feel that we're grinding the compassion and empathy that we're born with out of these kids and out of this generation. And to me, that's so hard to put back.
Yeah, you bring up so many good points here. I'll speak to the broad one, which is sort of smashing out compassion. It's really tricky to watch parents indoctrinate their kids, I think, because then you open the newspaper the next day and you're like, okay, a school shooting. Well, how did we get such a violent society? Because we teach violence and we say like, yeah, it doesn't matter. These things are suffering. You can see it. They're squealing. You can hear it. It's gory and gushy, and particularly hunting, there's no buffer between you and the animal, unlike our food source. You don't really see what's going on behind factory farms, but when you're hunting, you're seeing it. You're seeing the direct cause to all the pain, and yes. Parents are saying, it's okay, go ahead, cause pain, cause destruction, it's okay. And then, there's a direct link to hurting animals to hurting people. And psychologists have studied this. It's well documented, well researched. So you end up living the society you build. And we build a violent society. So it comes right back to us. So it's always amazing to me that parents go that route. That's one. And then I had a question for you, because I figured you might say something similar, like, this is how we're raised. I wonder if it's also tricky for men, and if anybody's watching on the Instagram show here, just chime in, because I'd love to hear your thoughts on this. I wonder if, for a man, is it a turnoff when someone says, be kind, be gentle, be compassionate? Like only women are supposed to be those things? I'm asking. I have no idea.
That's something that in our society, I think they've tried to portray the man. They've gone past the point of, like Damien's point of being a defender for your family, for your friends, for your flock, which is kind of a play on why I created the vegan sheepdog. The vegan portion for being kind and compassionate for not just animals, but for everyone. And then the sheepdog part, because I will defend my flock, my herd, my family. I think they've made it to where men aren't supposed to cry, aren't supposed to show emotion. And I don't know where that started. I don't know why that crap started. But it's something we have to unteach generations. And that's the way I was born. My dad, God love him. He did not grow up in a hugging household. They were not overly affectionate. They hug each other and they kiss each other today. And even as a kid, I would hug my dad and give my dad a kiss every night, even when I was in high school. But there was just something that that compassion wasn't something that we were taught as young boys.
And yet it's there, right? It's there.
It's just there.
Taught to suppress it, right?
Well, I don't even know if suppress is right, because you brought up the idea that, even though I was hunting, we had dogs and I was kind and compassionate to the dogs. Right. It's almost like you're taught that it's okay to be compassionate to certain species and not compassionate to others. And to me, there's no difference. When you make that connection, which I have done, and I thank my wife for it all the time, because it's really changed my life. when you make that connection and you realize there's no difference between a dog or Philip Wollum's quote, a dog is a bear, is a pig, is a boy. And once you put that all together, it's like, why in the hell would I possibly condone hunting or condone hurting another species? It's incredible. I wish I had a great answer about when and where that started, but clearly as a society we're getting some of that wrong.
Yeah, and the funny thing is that, kind of back to Damien's point, but just maybe in different words, a strong man is compassionate. And by the way, sexy. So, if you're interested, and that's a whole nother conversation about the foods that make you not great in bed, so
yes.
Meat, folks, meat, that would be meat. So, but, there's nothing sexy or attractive or strong about a bully, about someone who, really a strong person is compassionate. A strong person steps out in front. So, not showing compassion and having a blind eye and just shutting down and saying like, nope, I have no emotions for this. That's not strength. That's saying I can't handle
Absolutely.
it. I can't deal with it. I'm shutting down. So a lot of these things to me are the exact opposite of what it means to be strong. And then since we're talking about it, it's just not going to help you in bed, folks. Not going to work.
Well, and the documentary that's getting ready to come out, which has Damien Mander in it, we'll just keep talking about Damien.
Hey, Damien, just hop on the feed.
Why don't you just come on with it?
Can't sing your praises enough.
He's busy. He's out in the bush in Zimbabwe, doing stuff that's important. The documentary Game Changers that's getting ready to come out, that's one of the topics that they address. And they are going to just, discuss the idea that the more meat you consume, the more dairy you consume, the less masculinity and virility that you actually have. They're going to talk about and test the idea that, that little blue pill that doctors prescribe, it's not fixing the problem. In Forks Over Knives, they talk about that. If you're having circulatory issues anywhere, that's early signs of heart disease. So what about taking a pill that enlarges your arteries seems like a good idea? How about we address the problem versus the 5 minutes that you're looking forward to later? I love when people bring that up. My wife cringes. I'm at that age where they say 60% of men have some form of erectile dysfunction. No one wants to talk about it. Nobody.
Huge number. I had no idea it was so big.
Nobody wants to talk about it. It is a huge number. They said between the ages of 29 and 60, like 60% of men have some level or form of ED. So as I was approaching mid-30s, my wife cringes when I talk about it. She's probably turning the live feed off right now.
Sorry.
No, it's okay, because here's why I talk about it. If I talk about it, someone's going to hear it and they're going to understand that, oh, maybe I can fix this without taking this pill that could kill me. So I was struggling with issues with ED. Adam Sudd, he'll talk about it. It's one of those things no man wants to talk about, but instead of taking a little blue pill, switching to a plant-based diet fixed it. Since my wife and I have gone vegan, we don't have this issue anymore. It's just, I don't know. It's taboo. No one wants to talk about it, but there are men out there that are suffering in silence and not saying a damn thing about it. Someone's got to speak up and talk about it. Is it something?
It's funny because sometimes I think, and my heart goes out to men because I think society puts them in a really tricky spot. Here, they're almost actively working against their own sex lives and their own heart health because society's saying you have to eat these things that are bad for you. Now, that's just a crappy spot to be in.
Yes, absolutely. When I grew up, I would drink, I'm not kidding, I would drink a gallon of milk a day.
Wow. Yeah.
I was a collegiate level athlete, and if I was thirsty, I would get milk. I would reach right in the fridge. It was just my dad and I at home for a long time, and right out of the gallon, like a true man, right? So, all of that built up over the years between the dairy, the meat, and the eggs that I consumed, which was like every single meal I ever had, has contributed to this. And thankfully, having a plant-based lifestyle as far as my diet goes, I don't have those issues. I have esophageal dysphagia, which is a issue that your throat will constrict and you get to the point you can breathe, but it gets really, really bad, almost to the point you're going to pass out. So a doctor in Florida, after we were at Disney, we had to go to the ER while we were in Disney, supposed to be, having a wonderful vacation. My wife was 7 months pregnant, takes me to the ER because I'm about to pass out. Finally, it gets cleared, and this doctor says, I don't have any research behind it. He says, but everyone I see that has this, it's when they're eating meat. So I wasn't smart enough then to listen to what he had to say. Finally, about 6 months later, my wife and I went vegetarian, and as soon as we went vegetarian, weird, I have not had the issue since.
Wow.
Not once. They did everything from a GI scope. They stretched my esophagus. They put me on Prilosec. You name it. They looked at it. They tried to figure it out. And the resolution was stop eating animals.
Wow. So, you bring up another thing that I'd love to talk about. Everyone thinks like, oh my gosh, if I don't have meat or dairy, I'm giving things up. Okay, first of all, we know from all the technology that's going on with plant-based foods, the taste is there. So you're not giving anything up. But all the things you're gaining, you're gaining a new lease on life. For you, it was kind of life or death. I had no idea that you had the esophagus thing. But, if you're having trouble breathing, so much so that on your family vacation, you're not going on the rides. As a young man, you're not in your 60s. You're late 30s. Is that right?
I just turned 40 in November.
Oh, right then. You're 40 years old.
I'm old.
When this happened to you, you were late 30s or something. So, to be so sick that you can't hang out with your kids in your late 30s, you got to go to the emergency room. I just don't see how that benefits you, So all the things you gain by just switching up your diet, which tastes just as great. So I had one of the things I like to do is cook a lot. So I'm all cooking for people, like at my house, throwing dinner parties, or on my show, my podcast, Awesome Vegans, or sometimes I just cook for people. So I was in a taxi, sorry, I'm just getting off on a tangent here. I was in a taxi the other day in Chicago, coming from the airport, and on a competing radio station to WGN, shall not be named, the taxi driver had it on, and I heard that the host loves animals and he loves to adopt dogs. And I was 99.9% sure that he probably wasn't vegan, even though he says he loves animals and loves to rescue and adopt out dogs. And so I said, let me cook for you. I'm not on their radio show. They're not going to have me on their radio show because I'm on WGN. Shout out again, WGN Radio. But I said, please just let me make you. You tell me your favorite dish, your favorite meat dish, and I will make it for you. So my next trip back to Chicago, I'm dropping off vegan food for some person I've never met, but just because I want them to have the option. And kind of along the same lines, Joel Murray, who is an actor who was on Mad Men and just a super all-around funny guy. He's the brother of Bill Murray, but he's, director, actor in his own right. He's also from Chicago. So we have this kind of LA-Chicago bond. And I said to him, because we're about to gear up for Lent, so I'm trying to give people as many meatless options that are tasty so they can make them during Lent as possible. So I said, hey, you come over. And he was in my kitchen and we did it on my podcast, Awesome Vegans. And then you come over. You're a total meat eater. We get it. No pressure, no pressure. It's your choice. But you give me the challenge of your very favorite meat dish and I will make it plant-based. So pasta bolognese a la Beyond Meat. Vegan pasta bolognese with Beyond Meat crumbles was so good that he was like, okay, give me more, give me more, give me more. So, you're not giving up on taste, but the benefits to like added sex life, a healthy heart. I don't know what could be more important, especially for people who have children, to actually be around and not keel over with a heart attack. I don't know what could be better for you or how much you really need.
Right? You figure in this country, the leading cause of death is heart disease, which Dr. Esselstyn, Dean Ornish, they have proven, they have factually proven that they can reverse heart disease. And when you think about that, it's like, holy crap. And it's not that difficult. If you look at the Engine 2 diet in particular, when you start eating a whole food plant-based diet, it is literally reversing all of that damage that you've done. And it doesn't take long. You talk about some of the foods that people are eating that, bacon. If you think about the end of the day, That is a 6-month-old baby pig. But they've got this fancy name called bacon. And you're eating it, not only it's not good for you because it's a level 1 carcinogen.
Thank you, World Health Organization, for getting that information out.
Right? Between that and Canada just removing dairy from their little food pyramid was fantastic to see. I can't wait until we see that information in the U.S. schools and taught to our kids, because it's not healthy. So, there's so many benefits. I don't know why. I don't feel that I've given up anything whatsoever by going to a plant-based diet, because when you think about it, when you're eating an animal, you're eating something that didn't belong to you. So you're not giving up something.
Right.
You literally, it didn't belong to you. It's not your life to take.
Right.
So that's one of 1,000 things I could talk about that I've come to realize, and I appreciate everyone who's out there spreading that message and sharing all that information and challenge. I love that idea of saying, let me cook something for you.
I will make it for you. In fact, I'll give that shout out to anybody here. If you're in LA, let me cook for you. If you're in Chicago, let me cook for you. If you're not, hit me up. You can again get my information on ElysabethAlfano.com. Hit me up and I will send you recipes so that you can make it anywhere you are in the US or the world, whatever. I've got vegan kung pao chicken. I've got vegan gyros. I've got vegan meatloaf. I've got vegan pasta bolognese. I've got vegan lasagna. Sure. I've got vegan mushroom poppers, and I have so much stuff. And all these recipes are actually already on my website, but and I'm always creating new ones all the time. So hit me up if you're looking for some meat options to go meatless with the plant-based, and take your meat recipe meatless. I got options for you.
It's so funny. We'll have our family over, and we'll have taco night with Beyond Crumbles or Light Life crumbles. And it's so funny. You can have tofutti sour cream. You can have follow your heart cheese, whatever your personal preference is there. And everyone's like, I didn't know this was vegan. And it's like, it's not that difficult.
That's a fun thing, is I love to just throw dinner parties, and I don't tell people like, oh, it's a vegan dinner party, because in the end it's just food, and food ultimately unites us. I mean, I do think we're kind of coming down on people. I'm writing notes to myself so I don't forget. We're coming down on people for like, hey, get with the program, it's so obvious. But the flip side is there's a lot of good news here, and I do think that food unites us. And I don't need to throw a dinner party and say, oh, is it okay with you? It's vegan. I just like move on, people. This stuff tastes good. This stuff tastes good. I'm making it for you. So like dinner party, we're opening the wine. Let's move on.
I don't know who started it. I've seen this several places, but one of the things I like to say is there's no such thing as vegan food. It's either vegan or it's not food. And that's so simple. I got guys I work with. They're like, hey, what are you having at lunch? And I show them, and they're like, can you send me that recipe? And it's like, oh, I thought you were this big manly man, and like now you want my little vegan food. So it's just it's great to play that on people.
Awesome. I love that. Well, of course, no one's got the memo better than all the plant-based athletes, right? So the Tennessee Titans, like, I don't think you can define more manly than the Tennessee Titans defense line. So, and Tom Brady and Rob Gronkowski and just so many plant-based athletes, which is so awesome. But I want to pick up on something we were talking about before about being sick, and that in switching over to a plant-based diet, you receive so much. It is gosh darn expensive to be sick. So, again, you do the spreadsheet, you do the math yourself, switch over to some vegetables or life on pills. Pretty expensive option, a life on pills. Not to mention it's no fun and it limits you and you can't do all this stuff, and then you're putting all these pills in your body, etc. But it's a pretty expensive way to go. I don't see the healthcare situation getting resolved anytime soon. So, when you think of the out-of-pocket expenses for a heart attack or cardiac disease, any of this kind of stuff,
hundreds of thousands of dollars.
Yes. To mention that it does put a cramp in your lifestyle. So.
Yes, it does, and that's a great point. You will hear some people say, "Oh, being vegan is expensive." Now, if you're going to, well, I get what they're saying, because if you go to McDonald's, you can buy a double cheeseburger for 99 cents, but their salad's like $7, right? So I get that, but if you are fixing it yourself, and like, let's be honest, rice and beans is about the cheapest daggone thing you can possibly buy that's vegan all day long. And if you compare, like, yes, and delicious. If you compare what you brought up, like the cost of a heart attack, cost of a stroke, cost of the things you can prevent with a whole food plant-based diet, it wins hands down every time all day long.
Yes.
So.
Yes, and and I'm not in Ohio, so I'd be curious what your thoughts are here. I mean, Chicago is pretty open to veganism. I know it's the heart of the Midwest, but there's a large vegan community there, and large plant-based, and Chicago used to be the heart of houses. It's Upton Sinclair's novel, The Jungle, all takes place around Chicago, 1904, and the hub of all the slaughterhouses in the U.S. Now we have 4 slaughterhouses left, and we used to be the hub. And those slaughterhouses are moving out as well, just because the people don't want that kind of pollution, toxic waste, toxic dumping. They don't want this in their alleys, behind their houses, etc. No. So these slaughterhouses are leaving in the city that used to be the hub of slaughterhouses. So it's very interesting that this Midwestern city is so progressive, but I don't know if it's that way across the Midwest. Do you find that there are more and more options in places like Ohio, and more options for restaurants and food choices for people?
We are seeing more and more options, and there's more all the time. I talked to you earlier about a chain that started in Cleveland. There's a couple in Columbus, and there's one here close to us just outside of Dayton called Melt. When you were a kid, you liked grilled cheese, right? Well, this is the adult version of grilled cheese, and they're not a vegan restaurant, but they have a full front and back page of menu items that you can get with the Impossible Burger. These grilled cheese sandwiches are they're so daggone big, you really have to try to cram it in. There are lots of options coming up. One of our favorites is a little hole-in-the-wall bar in downtown Dayton called Lucky's Tap House. You go down there and you walk in, you're like, I don't know if I should eat anything in here. And they have a great beer selection, and then they have a wonderful vegan selection. It turns out the owner's vegan, and he's like, hey, we're going to have options here. So most of the vegan community in this area know about it. The grocery store, which, our big chain here is Kroger. Kroger has a very good selection, and it seems to be increasing all the time. It used to be, if you wanted any of the Beyond Meat or any of that kind of stuff, or field roast, you'd have to go to Whole Foods. But now even Kroger is carrying a lot of that product. So things are changing, obviously a little slower here than they would be in Chicago or LA. I mean, we don't have a donut trend out here. That I'm glad we don't. Here's why. I would be 500 pounds.
Yes, I know. Yes. Yeah. So, I'd be stuffing my face with dill all day long.
That would be tough if there was a donut trend here. So, Elizabeth, I really appreciate your time today. I really enjoyed this conversation, and I have this feeling that you and I could carry on for most of the evening, because it's something that you're so passionate about, and I appreciate that. I'm new to this journey. I'm new to this whole lifestyle, and I'm really enjoying it. And I appreciate all that you bring to the movement and all you've brought to my journey.
Thanks so much. Thanks so much. I super appreciate that. Can I just say one more thing to the folks out there?
Absolutely.
Anybody who's watching or whatever we're going to do with this, if you repost or reshare. So one of the great things for me when I went vegan, actually, can I tell my vegan story real fast?
Please do. I think the more people that hear your story, there's going to be someone that will connect with that, and you never know.
Okay. So as a kid, I didn't want to eat meat. I'm 5, 7 years old, and I didn't want to chew it. I didn't like the taste. I knew that something wasn't right. Obviously, I was a kid, so I couldn't put my finger on it. But my folks, whom I love, my parents doing the best they could for me, they were like, oh my God, this kid's going to die. She's not eating meat. So they would punish me pretty severely. And they would say, okay, you have to stay at the dinner table until you finish. And I couldn't do it because it really just made me sick. So stay at the dinner table by myself for 3 or 4 hours. Then I started hiding meat in my pockets of my pants, or I'd try to hide it under the table, under the legs of the table. And then they would find it later and I'd get in trouble for lying. And so it was ingrained in me that, no, you have to eat meat. This is how you live. And so I grew up kind of thinking I don't like this, but I don't have any options. I don't want to say I was bullied into it, but I sort of felt like this is what we have to do, even if we don't like it. And then my nephew is an athlete, and he went to the University of Oregon, and he came after his first semester. And at Thanksgiving, the first time he had seen the family, he said, "My coach says I'm not supposed to eat dairy or meat." And I was like, what? Someone gave you permission? Someone actually told you shouldn't eat? I was vegan before he finished that sentence, because I had been waiting because I had always had these signals like, no, you have to. And here somebody was actually saying, no, better for you that you don't. So that was just such a fun foray for me to get into this movement, I'll say, or, just change my life personally as it meant to me. And what I found to be really encouraging is two things. So we talk a lot, like, why aren't people getting the message? But I find kind of on the flip side, there's a lot of really happy news here. So things are changing. But not only that, ultimately, food unites us. And in addition, ultimately, at least in my experience, and when I speak to politicians, animals unite us. Very, very few people see cruelty to animals. Yes. Even when people think that there's going to be a price increase at the grocery store, they always vote for better, not to get rid of, but they vote for better factory farming for animals, better situation, better laws for animals. And so as we look ourselves as a country and we say, okay, all the Democrats hate all the Republicans and all the Republicans hate all the Democrats, one area where we do get along is animals. With a very rare psychopathic exception, nobody wants to see cruelty to animals. And I think we're very united there. And also on the same front, again, as we look to politics, and we're all of us, no matter what side, so frustrated. And so, you watch the television, you say, like, I don't know how these lunatics, like, on both sides are running the country. And I feel so frustrated with it. But when I vote really not once every 4 years. I vote 3 times a day, because my dollars are what really counts when I walk into the grocery store. And and what my choices in my life, be it food or be it fashion or be it, I have vegan shoes, vegan clothes, I'm in jeans all the time anyway, so that's the difference. But, really pay attention to what I buy, and particularly with food. I vote 3 times a day, and my food choices, my dollar choices make a difference. So one thing I've loved about being plant-based is I feel super empowered. When I watch TV and the politics, I feel disheartened. But then I walk into the grocery store and I'm like, I got this. I know it's good for the planet. I know it's good for me. I know it's good for animals. And cha-ching, that's how I'm spending with dollars.
That is a great point, that we do vote with our dollars. And I think that's how we're going to see change in this country, because there are lobbyists involved that are fighting for laws that still support and protect the meat and dairy industry. And until we have the same equal power on our side, the only way we're going to get through is by stop buying these products. Stop buying these products from these companies that support this cruelty. And without a doubt, companies don't exist if they don't have people buying their product. So the more and more that we're able to do that.
And also, if you look historically, change never comes because a bunch of politicians said, we should really make it better for everybody. Change always comes from the bottom. It comes from people who are like, nuh-uh, I'm taking to the streets. I don't want this anymore. So if you're not protesting, I totally get it. Very few people have the stomach for it. You still have a voice, and you have a voice with those dollars, and change it, because the lobbyists, all they want to make money. I don't think in the long run they really care if they're making money by lobbying for vegetable subsidies, something we didn't talk about, or if they're making money by lobbying for meat subsidies. I don't think they really care to make money. And I think ultimately corporations are the same. And I have to tell you, I love them for it, because our dollars are going to speak. And therefore, because they're paying attention to our dollars, our votes do matter. So I think change is coming, and it's not going to be long, because the dollars, and this is something I'm looking into from a holistic standpoint, it's not just the dollars, but it's the jobs. They're going to be switching to plant-based, because we can't sustain animal agriculture anymore. There's just not enough land. There's just not enough that we can take down all the trees or all the, there's not enough land. So you're going to have to start switching something, and our dollars are going to play a bigger and bigger role, and then you're going to see things shift. So I actually think it's a very positive outlook in the end.
It is. I got attacked on Facebook a while back. There was a local dairy that shut down, and I said, this is a good thing. It's positive that this dairy is being closed because the cruelty at that dairy will stop. I said, in my post, I said, I hope these farmers have something lined up, which, I don't want to see farmers put out of work. And to quote Philip Warren, he says, I don't want farmers out of work. I want their crops to change. And he's absolutely right. They can make all the money they want, but let's grow stuff that we can feed each other versus feeding animals that are killing us. So dollars are our votes, and that's our biggest power. And you are absolutely right. You don't necessarily have to be out there marching in the streets. You don't have to be, protesting slaughterhouses. You have to be in the grocery store, and by what you're putting in your cart, what you're putting on your plate, that is your vote, and that is your choice, and that is incredibly powerful.
Yeah, and I'll just add one more to that, which is why I also think it's so empowering. So there are very few benefits to getting older, but hey ho, there are some, and here's one of them. When I was younger, I just sort of took it as carte blanche, like the government tells me this is what I should eat, so if that's what I should eat, never take anybody else's word for it, including ours. So, okay, we've got our perspective. People don't have to listen to us. Do your research and be your own advocate, because if you are looking out for your family and if you are looking out for your own health, you'll make that switch, because it is so much better for you. We talked about money, we talked about heart health, your conscience, all that kind of stuff, the environment, your kids' future. You do your own research. Don't listen to us, and advocate for yourself. Don't let government or anyone else tell you what to eat. Advocate for yourself, and you'll find yourself feeling a lot better.
I don't, so last night when I posted the preview who was coming on today, I described you as vibrant. And your personality and your energy and your light that you bring to this is infectious, and I really appreciate that. And I think, my wife and I talked about that last night, that couldn't have been a more appropriately descriptive title to advertise for you coming on. So, I really appreciate your passion. I really appreciate all that you do, all that you bring to this movement, all that you've done to support my wife and I in our journey. And if there were more people that had that passion and that energy and that, drive that you have for this movement, there's nothing that we can't do. So
super thanks for that. And of course, right back at you. Thank you for all that you're doing, and thank you for bringing the word out Midwest. And you and I and Becky, of course, have to meet up. So hopefully in Chicago or in LA or something will actually bring us together, because it'd be nice to meet in person too.
Absolutely. I couldn't agree more. And you should work on that thing in Chicago. That would be awesome.
Yes, so, I'm on it, people. I'm on it.
All right. Yes, you make Chicago happen. We'll be there. So if not, we'll figure something else out the next time we're in the same vicinity, and we'll make sure we at least get some dinner sometime. So, right. Elizabeth, thank you very much. I will repost this. I will post the whole video on Facebook, on YouTube. I will have a short clip from this on Instagram and Facebook, and so you can comment and add anybody that I forget the tag that we talked about and mentioned. And then feel free to share this, and hopefully someone gets something good out of this conversation.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Peace out.
You're very welcome. Take care.
Bye.